Special counsel Robert Mueller is a mystery man, perhaps the most private public figure in Washington. But as the leader of the Russia investigation, he and his team have become a political piñata after squeezing indictments, jail time, and plea deals from former Trump advisors, including the president's ex-fixer, now singing and facing prison, and his ex-campaign chair, now indicted and accused of lying.
There should have never been any Mueller investigation because there was never anything done wrong. There was no collusion. There never has been.
It's been a frame job, says one of his lawyers.
They are a group of 13 highly partisan Democrats that make up the Mueller team, excluding him, are trying very, very hard to frame him.
An angry president fired his attorney general and hired someone more to his liking on the investigation, and now delights in calling Mueller a conflicted prosecutor gone rogue. It's hard to remember that at the start,
I think he's the right guy at the right time.
Mueller was a bipartisan favorite.
He would have been on anybody's list of, let's say, the top 5 people in the country to have, taken on this kind of a responsibility.
The resume is long. At 74, he's been involved for decades in some of the Justice Department's most celebrated cases. Mobster John Gotti, Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega,
wreckage of Pan Am 103 fell,
and the Pan Am 103 bombing in Lockerbie, Scotland in 1988. A case that still remains personal.
I'll never forget the visit I made to Lockerbie, where I saw the small wooden warehouse in which were stored the various effects of your loved ones. A white sneaker, a Syracuse sweatshirt, Christmas presents, and photographs.
He's been effectively the same Bob Mueller in every place he has ever worked, whether that was the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Francisco in the 1970s, whether that was the George H.W. Bush administration in the 1980s, whether that was the D.C. Homicide Prosecutor's Office in the 1990s, or the FBI in the 2000s. He is hard driving, he's tenacious, he is incredibly thorough, and has a very strong sense of right or wrong.
A registered Republican, but it's hard to tell.
4.5 years of 2,000 meetings, I didn't hear him say anything political.
Really? In Washington?
Yeah, I know that sounds weird. He might have said that guy's a jerk. I didn't see it as a partisan issue.
How would you describe his politics?
Not.
As in there are none?
He's not. He's apolitical. He's nonpartisan. He is as I think has become quite clear, a pretty law and order guy. But he doesn't speak of things in political terms.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Which is partly why President Bush picked him to run the FBI in 2001.
The FBI must remain independent of politics and uncompromising in its mission.
Mueller arrived at the FBI just 7 days before 9/11. He served most of his term under Bush, and when President Obama asked him to stay for 2 more years, it required an act of Congress. The Senate approved 100-0. His M.O., a by-the-books guy, even after hours.
People told me after the Christmas party, while we're going to the director's house, a guy who never really interacts with us, that at the end of the party, that he would flick the light. So it's going 7 to 9 at 9:03. He's like, well, it's on the invitation, it's 7 to 9, it's 9:03, lights on, that's kind of a signal.
Married for more than 50 years to a former teacher, the father of 2 daughters, there still wasn't much small talk about family at work. A literally buttoned up and buttoned down boss.
I remember telling him, director, you wear a white button-down shirt can you wear like Tattersall or something?
I asked him finally, years after he had been director, what was the deal with the white shirts when you were at the FBI? He said, I understood I was leading the FBI through a wrenching period of change. I wanted to wear the white shirt because I wanted the other FBI agents to be able to know that this was still the agency that they had signed up to join.
His dress code as unforgiving as his work ethic.
He was in the office between 6 and 6:30 every morning, and he would always plop his briefcase down on the chair opposite my desk, not sit down and kibitz or shoot the breeze. Immediately, what's happening? What's going on?
There's not a lot of back and forth. Very quickly, you're going to go through the details of the case.
Would you assume that he is managing the special counsel investigation the same way?
Oh, heck yes. I wouldn't assume it. That is his, it's not like a professional choice. That's his DNA. What's going on today? What do you got? What do you got? What do you got? I don't want to hear a lot of noise. I want to hear what the facts are. Let's talk about it. What's your judgment? What do you think? Okay, next, here's our decision. Let's move on. Let's go. I never saw insecurity or nervousness, ever. Ever.
Ever? Never?
Never.
Mueller grew up in the wealthy Philadelphia suburbs and attended an elite boarding school. A classmate of John Kerry, then to Princeton. But the combat death of college friend David Hackett in Vietnam inspired Mueller to join the Marines.
He was wounded in combat, shot through the leg, received Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, and was right back in the fight a couple of weeks later.
In some sense, you feel that you have been given a second lease on life, and you want to make the most of it to contribute in some way.
After graduating the University of Virginia Law School, Mueller soon found his way to the Department of Justice and remained there for most of the next 4 decades.
My colleagues here at the Department of Justice, past and present.
With 2 short breaks to give private practice a try.
Bob Mueller has been notoriously unhappy every time he has tried to be in private practice. He just can't defend guilty people. He'll meet with a client, they'll explain his problem, and he'll say, well, it sounds like you should go to jail then.
So he'll tell his client,
it sounds like you're guilty. Bob Mueller is someone who sees the world in very black and white terms.
By 2004, Mueller was running the FBI when his phone rang. It was James Comey, then Deputy Attorney General. It was the first time Mueller and Comey would find themselves in a very controversial legal drama.
I was very upset. I was angry.
Comey was worried the Bush administration was determined to keep a warrantless eavesdropping program that Mueller, Comey, and their boss, Attorney General John Ashcroft, thought was illegal. But Ashcroft was in the hospital recovering from surgery, leaving Comey in charge.
I was concerned that, given how ill I knew the Attorney General was, that there might be an effort to ask him to overrule me when he was in no condition to do that. Called Director Mueller, who had been a great help to me over that week, and told him what was happening. He said, I'll meet you at the hospital right now.
They had to literally race administration officials to Ashcroft's bedside.
Director Mueller instructed the FBI agents present not to allow me to be removed from the room under any circumstances.
In the end, Ashcroft backed Comey and Mueller.
He enlisted Bob Mueller because he knew that Bob Mueller had this incredible nonpartisan reputation in Washington.
That was then. Now, Trump compares Mueller to Joe McCarthy, and a Trump ally warns there's trouble ahead.
I think the report is going to be devastating to the president.
After months of haggling, Team Trump has provided written answers to Mueller's questions on collusion and is convinced Trump's problems will be more political than legal.
Eventually, the decision here is going to be impeach, not impeach. Members of Congress, Democrat and Republican, are going to be informed a lot by their constituents. So our jury is as it should be, is the American people.
Now that jury awaits Mueller, who is already letting his work speak for itself. As his office wrote to the court recently, senior government leaders should be held to the highest standards.
Bob Mueller believes in American institutions. So I think he wants to set the institutions up to make the best decisions that they can.